Part 82. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 818. Now that he is in the palace, he is not told by the emperor's brother Jinwu Zhangqiao. The emperor also intends to give Qin's daughter a new identity so that she can become a palace princess. That woman really got the true biography of her father. A small official prostitute who can never turn over can even step by step to the point where even the emperor is covered. When Renai's heart admired the woman. Your brother was lost by the woman's fascination. The queen advised her several times, and she stayed where the woman lived. She hadn't set foot elsewhere for a month. The AI family wanted to mess up the woman. The stick was killed, but the emperor sent someone to watch closely, and the AI family went there, and the emperor arrived. The queen cannot intervene in this matter, and the AI family can only rely on you. The empress did not think of a way. Later, the people who kept the gate of Kwei Palace saw her and immediately hid the woman. I didn't know where to hide. The kung fu she was looking for had already arrived. This matter is really depressing. Because of such a woman, the mother and the son are inexorable recently. The entire palace seems to be shrouded in shadow. For a long time, I don't know what the emperor will look like because of that woman's disappointment. Such a woman, no matter how talented she is a misfortune in the eyes of everyone. Existence like the Empress Dowager, it is even more impossible to watch the scourge over the faint of the emperor. The Empress Dowager planned to deal with Wang Rui's internal and external pinch and kill the woman first. In the future, even if the emperor blame him, one is his mother-in-law and the other is his brother. Of course, the most important thing is that the woman is his younger sibling, and it is completely justified to be dealt with by the younger sibling. When Renai supported the Queen Mother's idea. Before he left the capital last time, he actually thought that such a woman should have died, a woman who was not good enough and stole her life, but also wished to turn the capital into the rain. It was really ambitive. This time she dared to put her mind on her own brother, which was unbearable. When the empress was pretending to be sick to call the emperor, when Renai was on the side, waiting for the emperor to come, he slipped away from the side door and went directly to the Kwei Palace where the woman was. The Kwei Palace is very close to the Zhongzheng Hall where the emperor discusses government affairs, which also shows that his good brother values the woman. His emperor is different from him. He walks around like him. He sees too many females, but his emperor is very simple. He dares to pay attention to his emperor. This woman must gotta die. When Renai walked all the way, with a small bottle of red crane crown given to him by the empress. He had a sense of killing in his heart, and his pace was extremely fast, and he soon reached the gate of Kwei Palace. The who guarded the door immediately saw that he was fierce and wanted to close the palace door. But before it was closed tightly, the palace door was kicked open by him, and the door on one side was knocked to the ground. There are a lot of eunuchs in this palace. They all came over one by one and wanted to invite him out. A few went straight to the inner room. When Renai's footsteps never stopped, but everyone who blocked the road was pinched his throat and twisted his neck. After killing so few, the remaining eunuchs stepped back one by one, all giving way to him. When Renai was not afraid that these eunuchs went to the emperor to report. From the moment the emperor entered the Sinning Palace, no news from outside could be heard inside the Sinning Palace. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 819. When Renai stepped into the inner room step by step, and looked around without seeing anyone. Simply went through the side door of the inner room toward the yard. The Kwei Palace is very large, and there are not only rockery pavilions in the back garden, but also lakes and lakes. His emperor seemed to have put a lot of thought into housing the woman. The faint sound of the piano sounded into the ear at this moment. He heard this piano sound outside the teacher's wall. At that time, he had doubts about who played the piano, and now it is confirmed that he is such a woman who can harm the country and the people, and he feels ridiculous in his heart. What a pity this piano skill. Walked along the piano sound. She wore a big red robe and sat with her back to him. She only held her hair halfway with a black wooden mule on her head, and ufa spread to her waist. When the wind blew, her hair dangled from the waist slightly lifted. Although Yingying's waist was covered in a red robe, she could still see its shape in the breeze. The figure is beautiful, just a back view. This woman is the capital of the country and the people. He froze for a moment, but thought of the woman's identity, sneered, and walked a few steps. She plucked her fingers on the strings like a flying butterfly, dazzling fast, and her piano sound changed from a resentment into anger and sorrow that made her heart beat faster. This fierce piano sound makes people feel sad and out of bounds. Suddenly a beep sounded. It was a broken string. A finger was cut from her blood, and blood drops fell on the piano. She pressed her fingers on the piano without looking back, and asked softly, "Is the King Rui coming?" The cold voice was extremely pleasing, as if the pearls and jade hit each other. When Renayu has stepped on the steps, the killing in his eyes faded, leaving only his face shocked. "King Rui is here to kill me," she sighed lowly. "I've been waiting for that person. I haven't waited so long, I suppose he can't come." She leaned forward slowly, and fell on the case of Qin. "If King Rui sees the person who is looking for me in the future, can you tell him on my behalf, I have not kept my word and have been waiting for him?" In just a few words, her voice was getting lighter and weaker in the end. Tears burst into his eyes, striding forward and holding her in his arms. Her eyes were tightly closed, black blood spilled from the corners of her lips, and she was clearly poisoned. Happy brother," he hugged her and ran madly out. Come, royal doctor, where's royal doctor?" He walked fast, whistling wind in his ears, but it was like her murmur. She said she lives on Chinatown. She said that if he wanted to, he could see him when he turned around. She asked him, would she not go to her? She took a bite on his shoulder and said to him, "Find her before he is hurt, otherwise he will forget her." She also said, she will always wait for him. She always called him nerd. Asked if he was lost and could not find her. Yeah, he nerd. Why is he so stupid? He glanced into the hospital and took a peek at the girls in everyone's home in Huikwei Street, but only missed his own home. Happy brother, he hugged her tightly and whispered, "I'm coming for you, your nerd is looking for you. Open your eyes and open your eyes to see if they are good, brother, you will be fine, you will be fine." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 820. When Renai rushed directly to Taiji Hospital. With a loud roar, the doctors in the Thai hospital were all around her, taking her pulse for her. To save her, when Renai's voice almost begged, "She can't die." He squeezed her other hand tightly, wiping the blood shed from the corner of her mouth with a handkerchief. She had lost a lot of weight. She had almost no meat on her fleshy cheeks. Her rounded chin had become sharp, and her pale face became more and more pale, like a paper man, and because of her. The face was pale, and the red prostitute gauntlet on the cheek was extremely vivid. Official prostitute. That was his conviction for her. That was his decision. Put her as an official prostitute, and with gauntlet, you can never roll over. At this moment, he can't wait to kill himself. Happy brother, you'll be fine. His hands were all sweaty, and he grabbed her hands and squeezed them over and over, looking up at the doctor. "I gave her a Tianxiang Jadu pill, hurry up, how can you save her, hurry up. Tianxiang Jadu pill, it is said that there is only one capsule in the entire palace. The Mong was dedicated to the emperor, but the emperor was affectionate and gave this Tianxiang Jade pill to King Rui. Now, this King Rui has even fed such a precious Tianxiang Jade pill to such a mortal and undoubted woman. The doctors present were all bleeding. About Tianxiang Jade pills had an effect, and the woman's life was suspended. However, the doctors are not optimistic. The head of Hefatanjian, the Thai hospital, personally rescued her. She eats the crane top red that sees blood and throat. Although you gave her Tianxiang Jade pill in time, it is as poisonous as crane top red. Basically they are unable to return to the sky. Today, she can only continue acupuncture to help her clear the toxins from her body, but she can't be sure if she can wake up. As long as there is hope, Wen Yu breathed a sigh of relief, glanced at the horrified crowd around him, reached out and touched the tears on his face, and asked the dean, "Where is acupuncture? The faster the acupuncture is, the better." "There is no bed in the hospital." The doctors simply withdrew. The dean did acupuncture on the spot. As the dean became older, he gained a reputation both inside and outside the palace. He glanced at Wen Renai and said slowly, "This woman, Your Majesty, let me diagnose it for her that day." Wen Renai's eyes were nailed to Yan Ji's face, and all of her thoughts were her. When she heard the dean's words, she did not respond for a while and looked up at the dean. "Your Majesty asked me how she was. She is too ill. She once gave birth and hurt her vitality, and she did not take good care of her. Not to mention that she would be pregnant and have children in the future. It would also make her lose her life." The silver needle in the dean's hand was steadily pierced into the large acupoints on her back. He did not look at Wen Renai, and continued to say, "If it is a normal person, if you drink the crane top red in time, help her induce vomiting and then feed Tianxiang Jade pills, the chances of survival are half." Although she was okay with her body during this period in the palace, she was still very different from normal people. Her body was already vacant, and crane top red was the king of poison. Even with Tianxiang Jade pill, she could survive. Chances are not high. "Master Rui, you need to be mentally prepared." When Renai held her hand, nodded her head, her lips were tightly lined, her eyes were staring at her pale face, her soul seemed to be sucked away by her, and her eyes were not full of charm. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 821. The dean's words were a one-sided exhortation to the emperor. If you really like this woman, don't for sex. Being happy will only speed up her death. Or, this is a more euphemistic persuasion that the emperor should not indulge in beauty. The dean said this in front of Wen Renai, and he was telling Wen Renai that the emperor might not have touched the woman. Even if the woman hangs up now, I hope that King Rui will not centrifuge with the emperor's brother because of a woman. A living old man like the dean can immediately see the importance of this so-called former princess in the heart of the king. Wen Renai didn't understand the meaning of these words. But his heart was completely stunned by the dean's words. Little child hurt his vitality. Yes, he remembered that he had ordered the housekeeper to fill her with a bowl of abortion medicine, and also ordered the housekeeper to watch her fall and send her away. At that time, he was very disdainful, thinking about this gimmick child that this woman did not know, and he would never tolerate her having a child while she was Prince Rui. That was himself. He not only handed her to a place like the Kenji. They also left their own children. He was looking for her terribly, but she was in his eyes and looked like a minor who had been tortured by him. How desperate should she be then? He never did, so he turned to look at her. Why? Seeing Wen Renai look like this, the dean sighed, "Master Rui, if you feel chest tightness and shortness of breath, why not go out and breathe? The man is in the quartet, but one of the women is still the daughter of the criminal." The dean did not understand how Lord Rui, who was so cold-hearted in Su'Ri, became a person, completely different from what he usually does. The emperor was bewildered by such a woman, and the dean's heart was sorrowful. Although he was a life-saving person, he really hoped that this woman could really not be saved, and he died. There was a loud noise outside the door. It was the emperor who came, but after listening to the doctors, he only paced outside the door and did not push in. It was not until sunset that the dean put away all of his silver needles. "Master, go back with her, remember not to see the wind. If she stays up tomorrow, I will continue to help her acupuncture, fried medicine for a while. I will let the child pass, yes, to the King Rui mansion, or Kwei palace." When Renai paused to help her dress, "Rui King's mansion, tomorrow the troubled dean will go directly to the king's mansion. It is good." As soon as when Renai was holding her, she was blocked by the emperor. All the palace people and the royal doctors all knelt on the ground and bowed their heads, let alone put their heads into the seams. They don't want to see such a royal thing. However, it was surprising that when seeing Wen Renai's arms, her eyes were closed with pale expressions, and the emperor with her lips clenched tightly did not speak, leaving a way for Wen Renai. Wen Renai held the woman in her arms and sat in the Rui King's mansion returned by the emperor's sedan. He hugged her into the yard and wanted to go to the room where she used to live, but he didn't move. This is his palace, she is his princess, but he doesn't know where she lives. After a little hesitation, he took her to the yard where he lived. The housekeeper helped him arrange before and after running. When he saw the woman on the bed, he was surprised and asked him, "Master, isn't this Jean Jianv? How do you?" After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 822. Why did you hold people back? This woman is no longer Princess Rui. She is an official prostitute and an official prostitute in Yangjing. The steward didn't say the next words. This woman now seems to be half dead. Looking at the disappointed appearance of his own grandfather, obviously he cares very much about this Jean family girl. His grandfather went to the palace once. What happened? How can there be an illusion of cognitive subversion? This is the princess of the king. When Renai sat on the edge of the bed, holding her hand and instructing the steward, "She is one with me. I will respect her in the future and see her like me." Although I felt that the remarks made by his own grandfather were absurd, he could hear the voice of the grandfather so solemnly, but the steward did not dare to neglect. After he quit, he went to arrange the yard where the princess lived. His own prince was rarely interested in a woman. Although the steward did not understand it, he faintly felt that even if this woman was a Qin family girl and an official prostitute, she would still be the heroine in the royal palace in the future. As the housekeeper left, he brought the door by the way. Quiet all around, he and her were left. When Renai helped her clean the quilt, so she lay beside her. It seemed as if they were back in the carriage together. "Happy brother," he tilted his head and stared at her face with a narrow stare, calling her softly, "If you wake up, wherever you want to go in the future, I will go with you, okay?" The word prostitute was really sharp on her pale face, and it was also dazzling. He touched his fingertips and wanted to help her wipe the word off. "Can be tortured, unless this piece of flesh is cut off, otherwise the word will last a lifetime. This word has become a scar for a long time." His finger touched the bumpy scar, which was not the same as her delicate and smooth skin. He was afraid of hurting her, and his fingers were very light and light. After rubbing it a few times, the word prostitute became even more red, and the skin around her was also scraped red. The movement of his abdomen gradually slowed down, his eyes stared, and the tears in his eyes flowed unknowingly, blindfolded and blindfolded. "Happy brother," he murmured, "happy brother, you wake up well, you hit me and scold me and bite me, you can do whatever you want to me, you wake up well." On the day of parting, in the afternoon, he and her were naked like fish into dry land, and the images of entanglement and inseparability often came to mind. But now, the picture had faded, and what appeared in his head was her tender and soft voice. "Damn, I'm afraid you've lost your way. What can you do if you are so stupid and can't find me? Damn, then I'll wait for you, you're coming to me. If you don't come to me, I have no face. If you don't come, I will find another man. Okay, okay, I'll wait for you, I've been waiting for you." He reached out and held her face, making her head snuggle up to his neck, and tears kept rolling down his eyes, dripping her face. "Happy brother, I'm not right, I'm too stupid and stupid, you give me a chance is good, as long as you wake up, you can do whatever you want." She did not respond. But what she said today rang again and again. "I waited for him for a long time, and he didn't come to me." The cold voice was full of despair. She waited for him so long and so long, why didn't he turn around to see her? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 823. Happy brother. When Renaya kissed her eyebrows and called her name over and over again, "Your nerd found you, you wake up and take a look, okay, you talk to me, you scold me." But no matter what he said, the person in his arms was still motionless. In the evening, Tai Hospital sent medicines to her, and when Renaya personally fed her medicine, she couldn't move her tongue and couldn't get the medicine in. He could only hold the bitter medicine and feed her medicine to her. But even so, most of the medicine ran down the corner of her mouth. He was tireless, feeding it again and again, yelling at her name and begging her to drink. The steward stood at the door, and from time to time looked inward, watching this scene, and dared not go in with his head down. When Renaya called for water, changed her clothes, and wiped her body, then she hugged her and continued to stun. The bitter medicine smell spread in his mouth. The bitterness spread from the mouth to the whole body. He stared at her brow blindly. It suddenly occurred to me that he had once fed her and drank porridge. At that time, she was also uncomfortable, lazily snuggled in his arms, forced him to be fierce, and would drop a few tears, and then looked at her with a grieving and pitiful face, complaining angry. After that, he just opened his mouth and bit him. "Happy brother," he murmured, "don't be angry, bite me, don't be angry with your body, bite a few bites if you want to bite me, I will never resist." He shoved her broken hair from head to head. She doesn't like tying her hair or combing her hair. She always likes to slacken her long hair in a carriage. She was too laissez-faire about her own affairs, but she was extremely critical of other small things, and always instructed him to do small things that he didn't need to do at all. He used to think that a woman like her had a good face and was lazy and coquettish. No man could stand her. At that time, he prefers her who was sleeping in his arms, and she fell asleep like a small-breasted cat, and let him knead it. But now she was so cleverly nestled in his arms, but he was full of eyes, hoping that she would wake up, hoping that she would give him impetus as before. Happy brother, he looked at her, almost calling her that night, hoping that she would respond to him at some point. He had thought that when he found her, he would have to toss her hard, bloated her butt, and a bite on her shoulder and a bite to ask her where to hide. But now that she had found her, he knew that what he had done to her was far more cruel than he had imagined. Happy brother, he was holding her, and finally couldn't hold it, he was so tired that he fell asleep. In his sleep, he entered the palace, and as soon as he turned around, he saw that she was standing under the plum tree in the backyard of the palace and smiling at him. "Damn, you haven't got lost this time." She wore red clothes with a lot of red plums embroidered on it. He hurried over to hug her, but his eyes narrowed to touch her. The plum petals scattered on her body flew away with a twinkling of eyes. Kung fu, her entire body became countless petals floating in the air. He opened his hands to flutter, his arms empty, without her, no petals, and no red plum trees in the yard. Astir sober. Only the dark night could not see the bright night, and she was still beside her. His face was wet and greasy, he reached out his hand and realized that he was full of tears in his sleep. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 824. Happy brother. When Renai was close to her body, feeling the breathlessness on her body, when you wake up, we plant red plums in the backyard and build a lake. Your favorite game is to play water, you will love it. Huan brother, you said you have to wait for me. I'm here. How can you keep your word open? You have to work hard to open your eyes. I haven't gotten up to marry you. Would you wake up? Happy brother, I beg you, open your eyes and see, your nerd is right in front of you. You hate me, just wake up and bite me, okay, don't do this, don't toss yourself like this. But it wasn't her who had tossed her, but him. He tossed her like this. He spoke to the end, crying silently. Fearing that she would fall asleep again, he wouldn't know if she left in her sleep, so she sat up and hugged her in her arms. Those who talked in their mouths talked about what they first met. At that time, you faced me with thin waist and thin neck. I felt that I could break your neck with one hand, and I was thinking about the spy who sent it, only by the beauty. What use? Happy brother, but I like your beauty plan. Happy brother, if you hate me, wake up and kill me with a sword, it is my fault that is outrageous, I am sorry for you, happy brother, you wake up, as long as you wake up, you kill I can do it. But his happy brother didn't even want to wake up and kill him. One night passed, and someone sent the medicine at dawn. He still took the medicine into her mouth with a sip. The dean came to give her acupuncture, and he asked the dean how she was doing. The dean looked at him with a sigh, I can only do my best. As for whether she can wake up, it depends on the strength of her health. You talk in her ears, maybe she has raw will wake up. The dean's words were very euphemistic, but when Renai heard it, he became more confident. So she spoke while holding her all day. The things she had experienced with her before were taken out and said by him. And how to remodel the back garden of King Rui's mansion, what kind of fairy-like life the two will lead in the future, he thought about it one by one, and said it again and again in her ear. She likes to play around. When she wakes up, he must take her around the world. She will be happy at that time. Tired later, he embraced her in his arms, and between them, everything turned red in the eyes. He was sitting with her in bed with a big red hippa on her head, sitting beside him shyly. He lifted hippa and stared at her for a moment. Her long eyelashes trembled, raised her head and smiled shyly at him, and the voice of Fudge softly called to him, damn. He listened to the nerd she called, and felt that his soul seemed to have been taken away by the nerd, and he was stupid for a while, and had no response. Still her eyes twitched and smiled at him coquettishly, and she called again, Gad. He reached out to poke her, she frowned slightly, her face shy, her slender white fingers slowly pulling her closer to her belly. She looked at him with joy and contentment in her eyebrows. His palms covered her belly, feeling the softness and warmth of her belly, smirking and looking at her belly. But the next instant, all his hands touched was blood, and she looked up, and she was still laughing, but the smile was sorrowful and mournful. Nerd, our child, is a girl. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 825. When Renai's head was stagnant and she didn't know how to react at all. Only her eyes lost her soul and stared at her seemingly bleeding belly. Her voice continued quietly in his ears, Nerd, she was buried under the red plum tree in the yard without a coffin. You put me with her, I am mother, I can't protect her during my lifetime, I hope to keep her after death. He later looked up and stared at her. I want to ask, Why are there children? Today is their big wedding night. I want to ask, is the wedding dress on her stomach stained red with blood? Why is she bleeding all the time? I also wanted to ask, why did she call his nerd bite, but he was King Rui, not a nerd. But open mouth, but speechless. It was her, smiling at him again. The smile was soft, leaving his head empty, and those doubts were gone. Just listening to her softly sighing and saying, "Daddy, don't get lost this time, you've found her wrong." This sigh-like murmur was like a breeze, and it passed by once, he didn't even hear it clearly. Only subconsciously infected by her slightly resentful voice was uncomfortable. She continued to smile at him, but that laughter became crying, what was left from her eyes became blood, and drops of drop fell on the back of his hand. The nerd seemed to be still in the ear, but the sky became red. In his dull head, it seemed that he had finally thought. Subconsciously hugged the blood red that was about to dissipate, shouting like a heartbreaker, "Happy brother! Huan brother, don't go. I remembered that you are my happy brother and you are my wife. You are pregnant with my child, that is a baby girl, that is our child, our child." It was nothing. When Renao stared at her empty arms, and suddenly felt awkward, physically and mentally painful. He felt as if he was suffocated, and was out of breath. An excited spirit opened his eyes and realized that it was a dream. Another dream. Everything was a little fuzzy in the dream, and she even forgot what she said. The pain in the skin of the dream, however, made him feel so clearly even when he was awake. Fortunately, it's just a dream. Fortunately. One side, you can see her lying in his arms. She's still in his arms. It's just a dream. He was sweating all over, and then he felt relieved. Fortunately, she is still there. Just had a dream. Just a dream. He reached out and embraced her tightly. At this moment, he felt as if he had walked from hell. The body was still trembling with hindsight, and his heart was still heavy and uncomfortable. He turned to kiss her eyebrows and said, "Happy brother, wake up soon." But when her lips landed on her cheeks, she seemed to be frozen, without moving. There was no trace of heat in her arms. He squeezed the fingers of her hand trembling and moved up, touching her wrist. Without any beating, her faint pulsation was completely gone. His lips had not left her cheeks, but the tears on her face fell and covered her face. For a moment, he just stared at her, his voice disappeared, his happy brother. The situation in this vague dream seemed to reappear in my mind. Her smiling eyebrows, her euphemistic expression, her reluctant gaze. And her joyous voice overflowing with happiness. Our child, she is a girl. Damn, don't go the wrong way this time. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 826. King Rui is seriously ill. Having been ill for more than a month, even the Emperor and the Queen went to King Rui's palace to visit King Rui in person. Regarding the cause of King Rui's serious illness, there are different opinions in the room, one by one can't figure out. If this king is good and still looks good, and the Iron King is selfless and the most impartial King Rui is dead, there will be one less person in the capital who speaks for the people. The coquettish girls and the admired men will be missing. God. Therefore, King Rui was seriously ill. Even if the people on the streets did not know the reason, they would be extremely concerned. One piece in the whole day was about Gossip King. The emperor looked at King Rui, who was dying on the bed, and a little bit of indignation at the death of the beauty turned into helplessness. Although I brought her into the palace, I never touched her. You do need to be depressed because of this. Why a manly husband has no wife, and a woman like her is not worthy of you. If you toss yourself because of such a woman, your mother-in-law and uncle will only laugh at you. The emperor was rebuked by the queen mother, and she also felt that King Rui's illness was because he had put the former Princess Rui into the palace and felt lost face, so he was so depressed in bed. From the morning when he came to the royal palace of Rui, the emperor sat next to Wen Renai's bed, whispering, starting with the two brothers when they were young, having spoken all morning. Until the topic turned to her, when Renai opened her eyes and stared at her emperor. Did she say anything to you? Who else could she be besides the former Princess Rui? When the emperor heard about Ren Yu's question, he suddenly realized that his brother was really sick because he had robbed his ex-wife. I like listening to her playing the piano, and I have nothing to say to her. I go to her, that is, listening to her playing the piano, and haven't done anything else. When Renai's eyes dropped slightly. Her piano sound was really nice, and he had the pleasure of hearing it twice. Once did not meet, and once was parting. Thinking of the sorrow in her piano that day, when Renai's chest coughed violently. The emperor rushed to help him pinch his chest, but when Renai grabbed the emperor's hand, and he coughed and asked, "She didn't have that. Did she say anything to you? What did you say?" The emperor didn't understand the idea of his brother. Didn't he have a beloved person before? Why he still cherishes the daughter of this criminal? What does his brother look like? He can't tell whether his brother hates it or not. She said to her that she was waiting for someone, and she said to her that if she can't wait for that person one day, please keep her box and give it to him in the future. The emperor looked at his brother's bad face and immediately comforted him. "Xiao Yu, don't be sad. The woman you are thinking of, the uncle and the mother, have been helping you to keep an eye on it." When Renai Vignan looked at his elder brother slightly. The coquettish expression on the emperor's face made him even more sad. His favorite, his favorite. He smiled at his emperor brother, smiled and laughed, and cried, "Brother emperor, she is dead. You and your mother-in-law should be careful again. She is already dead. I killed myself and her child, I killed her." Depressed for many days, the emperor finally had time to talk, and the emperor had not had time to accept his brother's words, and saw when Renai suddenly leaned over the edge of the bed and sprayed blood on the ground. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 827. Every day, there are several princes waiting at Rui's mansion. Listening to the emperor's roar, sharing the royal doctor, the princes waiting in the mansion rushed in. King Rui vomited blood, and the whole man was sitting on the bed, staring at the pool of blood on the ground. The medical doctor stepped forward carefully and gave him a pulse, which relieved him. King Rui is suffering from heart problems today. His body is entangled with sickness for no other reason than heart disease. Now he spit out his blood. Although it may seem dangerous, in fact, he will spit out the depressed blood in his heart. The emperor sat in the king's palace until the afternoon, and then he drove back to the palace. It was only on the way back to the palace that he gradually turned around and understood what King Rui said. So when he returned to the palace, he kept going to Kwei Temple, looking for the cage left by the woman. Minji Palace opened the cage, and there were countless small clothes that babies could wear. The emperor had time to look around. Someone came to the palace, and Lord Rui entered the palace. The emperor contacted his younger brother and thought that if these little babies were to be seen by the younger brother, it would be much more sad. He had the intention to hide or destroy the box. But I thought that if these things were not given to Wen Renai, I was afraid he would be more depressed. Simply waiting for Wen Renai in Kwei Hall. Wen Renai did not open the cage before the emperor. He looked at everything in Kwei Hall and said to his emperor, "I want to move everything she used to the King Rui's mansion. Not to mention what the woman used, as long as her brother can get better, it is to move the entire Kwei Hall to King Rui's mansion, and the emperor is also very willing." The piano she played that day was still in the pavilion, and there was blood that belonged to her too late to clean up. When Renayu, who was driving in the car, held the piano, and under her feet was the cage left by her. She declined the queen's request to stay in the palace for one night, and returned to King Rui's palace. At the Fuzhong placed the cage on the bed where she slept. He waved everyone back before opening the cage. Countless baby coats in boxes. The pins of these clothes are skewed, and there are still a few blood stains in many places. People who want to make clothes are not good at it, and often puncture their fingers. He picked up the little dress and laid it on the bed. It was all clothes for little girls, and a few beautiful little skirts. He suddenly remembered that dream she had had that day when she left. Nerd, our child, she's a girl. The child, if born, must be as beautiful and as cunning as she is. If born, how good it should be. She told him in her dream that she didn't take good care of her child. But he did not take good care of the child. His life was smooth, and his life was bright. Worthy of heaven and earth, worthy of parents and brothers. The only thing that is ashamed is his wife, his baby. He thought he could no longer shed tears, and his heart was ashamed. But looking at this little coat, his eyes were fascinated by tears numerous times. At the bottom of the cage is a thick envelope. It said the words "The nerd is in love." That Wan Chiu's words, he has seen. She had given him the address of her father's possessions. The words in that envelope had been forgotten, but now they were right again with the words in front of them. She had given him that letter, didn't she expect him to see her? But he never went to see her. He had countless opportunities to turn around, and he could have met her from the beginning. But he went a long way.